So right off the bat, I'm just gonna address it. Is our farm on the edge of bankruptcy? Hey everybody, you're watching Cole the Cornstar. Good morning everybody. Today we are going to be combining soybeans. So here's our plan of attack for today. We have about 800 acres of soybeans that need to be harvested, and today we're gonna try to do 100. Oh, we innovated half a pass across the field, and we have already encountered our first problem for the day. We took the air bar that was on the front of our soybean head off earlier this morning, and that thing had some weight to it, and so now all of our spring settings for keeping the head hugging to the ground are wrong because we don't have that weight on the front anymore. So we need to do some adjusting. So the way this head works, there are little pivots on each side of the center of the machine, and so the head actually can flex to touch the ground, and they're kind of spring tension. So if we lifted the head up off the ground right now, it should make kind of a frowny face, but right now it's basically straight. So when we end up going through the field and we hit a little bit of a high spot, the springs are pulling too tight, so it pulls our head up off the ground, so we're not shaving the ground like we would like to. So we got to adjust some bolts to loosen things up, to give a little bit less pressure on those springs, so that way it'll sag down a little bit more, and then we'll get a much nicer cut. And also right here we have a missing one of these guards, so we need to get one of those put into place too. So apparently for correct spring tension, when we lift up on the end, it's supposed to feel like 150 pounds. I feel like that's a terrible way of gauging it. That side's a little lighter. Load on the go, number one for the day. If you look down into the beans, you can see how laid over they are. I should have really nice clean rows, but right now they look all bushy, and that bushy look is from them falling over. Unfortunately for us, the field that we are in is going to take us a little extra time to get finished because we have lodged soybeans in this field, which means they're leaning over. And I can only combine them one direction because if I try to go back and forth, when I come back, I'm leaving about 10 bushels to the acre on the ground because they're leaning so far, I can't cut them. So I'm just leaving whole plants that are laid over. So I'm combining one direction, and then when I get to the field, I have to drive all the way back to the other end, not harvesting anything, and then I turn it around and put the head down, and then I combine. So it's making us pretty much go twice as slow right now. After combining one direction for the last 2 hours, we are just now doing our last little sliver, and just like that, we are now done with this field, and we will be going to another. After we finish this dump, we are going to be heading down the road, so we're gonna have to take off the head to do that. My brother just walked up and unhooked all of the stuff from the head, so now once we empty, we are simply just going to set the head on that trailer, and then we're gonna be heading down the road. We just arrived at the next field. Looking at these soybeans, they're still leaned over a little bit, but not nearly as bad as the last field. And there's a lot less green in these ones. So we're hoping we'll be able to pick up some combine speed today and be able to get a good chunk done over here. But ideally, we'd like to be able to get the whole field done. I believe it's about 140 acres. We're gonna start off by getting this field opened up, so we are currently going around all of the edges. Whenever you are outlining a field, you have to be the most careful and vigilant, because in the case of right here, sucked up a couple big chunks of dirt that I'd rather not have go through the machine. All right, you come here, and you come here. Before we get too carried away, we're gonna do a little check behind the combine on the ground just to make sure we're not kicking a bunch of beans out. Basically, all we're looking for is beans. If we see beans like this, we may need to make adjustments. It just depends how many we find. So we're looking for less than 4 per square foot right here. Looks like we have 1 square foot. That is very acceptable. This is 1/4 of a bushel per acre loss, or $2.50 per acre of loss with 1 bean per square foot. Now we got our first breakdown to this field. We are missing a sickle right there. Hey, this is a luxury we never get in any of our fields. Come on, Allie. Good girl. Good girl. Hey, that's my seat. You gonna drive the combine? What you think, Ellie? What you think, girl? I've got news and bad news. The good news is we just passed over 100 acres in this new field, so we've probably done about 120 acres today, so we've hit our 100-acre goal. The bad news is I was just going along, and I looked up, and I saw a skunk about 2 feet in front of me. He's running right down the road. He sprayed the combine. And when they spray the combine, it stinks really bad. And it stays stuck to the combine for like a good week. So it currently smells really bad in here right now. I can pretty much taste the skunk spray. So that's the bad news. So here's our productivity report for today. While we had the head on the ground, we averaged 16.9 acres per hour, and we had the head on the ground for 6 hours with an average speed of 3.4 miles per hour, and we did 101.6 acres. Little pro tip for keeping your windows clean: if you get one of these California car dusters, they work pretty good for wiping the windows down. If you get done at the end of the day and you just wipe it, then you don't have to get the glass cleaner out and stuff, and it makes it a whole lot easier. And honestly, this is so much nicer, it's not even funny. Oh yeah, look at that, cleaning up the mirrors. Ooh, doggy. This is gonna be our ride home for the night. Stay. There, good boy.
12 hours later.
It is now the next day. I'm a little slow getting out to the field this morning. They got the field done that we were working on last night, and they have now moved to another field, and our goal for today is to get another 100 acres done. For today's job, I think I'm going to be running the gray Freightliner, pulling the new Wilson trailer. My dad brought it over to this field, and he thought we were going to be starting on this side of the road, so we ended up parking it on this little grass path, but they ended up going to the other side of the road with the combine. So I'm going to have a little maneuver right now. I need to sneak past this tree. There's 2 other trees behind me that I have to go through, and then I have a blind intersection that I have to back across that's right at the top of a hill. So, wish me luck. Whoa, what's up, ninja dude? What's up? Since the combine is getting a new field opened up, we're going to be sitting a little while waiting for a semi-load. So in the meantime, I've got the John Deere tractor over here with the Batwing on it. I'm going to do a little bit of mowing around our driveway edges, so that way we can see the edge of the ditch a little bit easier, and hopefully it should make it a little bit easier to pull in with the semis. When you're mowing the edges of driveways and stuff like this, you do need to be careful and walk through the tall grass first, because right here, looks like we got some nice tall grass. When I got feeling around with my feet, look at this. Got a big old rock hiding in there. You wouldn't want to hit that with the mower. First load off the new field. Yeah, look at that. that looks a lot better. Not only does mowing look nice, but it's also a safety feature for the semis. When we mow the whole driveway, we are able to see the edges. So when we come in with our semis, we can put our wheels right on the edge of the driveway, and we know we are on driveway. We don't have to worry about accidentally getting over too far and dropping our wheels off into the ditch on this side. And then we also don't have to worry about not taking the corner wide enough and dropping our wheels in the ditch on that side. Ooh, doggy, we have ourselves a load of soybeans. Sioux City tarp people, you guys are awesome. Automatic tarp. The field we are currently combining is the field that we call the north side of Mary Lou's. This is a rectangular shaped field. It's about 85 acres, and I guess it does have this little side hill piece over here. And we gotta be really careful on this little side hill piece because there are a lot of rocks. So usually we try to do that one last, because if you're gonna break rocks, we'd rather have a little bit left to do for the day rather than the entire rest of the field. This field is really nice going. You can pass through the waterways, and it has half-mile long rows. So if you get in really nice conditions, you can really open up the machine, set the auto steer, and just let the combine cruise. Taking a look at how the combine is chomping through the field right now, I'd say we're looking at some pretty brown stems and some pretty dry beans. It looks like Cooper's got some nice ground speed on the combine, and it also looks like it's doing a really nice job of feeding into the head. Another thing that I'm looking at, out of the back of the combine, where the spreaders are spreading the trash, it looks like it is doing a much better job than it has in years past. That's something we've struggled with, is even residue spread out of the back of the combine. You can still see we have some dark striping in between spreads where we can't get the full throw pattern, but compared to what we have seen in years past, I would say this looks 5 times better. See if we can catch Zach back here in the grain cart sleeping. Oh, those windows are tinted. It's hard to see. Oh, he sees us. Quick, get out of there. Ooh, look at that. There's something you don't see that often. 2 4-potters side by side. Another 4-potter up there. Wow. Whoa. Another 4-potter up there. Quad 4-pods. See what we're working with and how full this bin is. If I had to guess, I'd say it's probably about halfway. We're at the halfway point right here. Oh! All right there. We got a ways to go. 1, 2, 3, 3.5 rings. This drain bin is 7 rings tall, so it's actually exactly at the halfway point. Just got back to the field after dumping, and all the equipment is here, but it's off. I don't know where everybody's at. The pickup truck is not here, and the ladder is down on the back of the combine, so I imagine probably something up there is broken. I just found out what is happening. On the side of the engine, we have all this dust stuck to everything. I guess one of the diesel lines must have got a hole in it, and it dripped over everything, and so that's why everything's all dirty. But they went in to go get a new one of those. I don't know which one it is. I'm assuming it's probably the one with tape on it. They probably tried to patch it to get it over here in the field. So they should be back in a little bit with a new part.
Come on, baby.
Oh yeah. I would like to report that last night, I believe I did hit a skunk. It still smells like skunk in here, and it also smells kind of like whatever Cooper ate, which I think was a pizza burger, so it smells kind of weird in here. We're back in business. Instead of just sitting here waiting, might as well do a little bit more mowing. I don't know what it is about this, but this is super satisfying, and I think I'm in a patch of wild parsnip. Probably a good thing to get rid of that.
12 hours later.
Day number 3, here we go. It looks like we got the neighbor's combine in too. Last night we were actually able to run fairly late. I think we got out of the field at 11 p.m. The dew really didn't set in very hard. We did get done on the side of the road that we started on, and then we jumped across to where I was back in the semi across the road. We jumped over to there, got a little spot opened up for the semis. So it sounds like Cooper just got the combine started, so we're gonna fire up the semi. I may have to unload the load I brought back last night. And then our new goal is to get another 100 acres done today. I forgot my dad had a meeting this morning, so he was not able to get started before me. So I guess we have a full semi to unload. And then Cooper and Zach are already out in the field, so it won't be long. We'll have another full semi coming in, so I'm not really gonna be able to mess around here for too long. Oh, get this thing warmed up. Oh, you dirty dog, who turned the switch off? They're definitely not wasting any time this morning. Just rolled in and we already have a full grain cart. I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the day, this grain bin might about be full. When it comes to soybean harvest, the combine guy has the most exciting job because you're doing all the action, you're going back and forth, there's a lot going on. The grain cart driver has the most relaxing job because when you're not being filled, you can sit there, you can watch a movie if you want to. The semi drivers, on the other hand, have the most tiring job because it makes you want to fall asleep. At the moment, our operation can store up to 62 bushels per acre of soybeans. So if our soybeans do better than 62 bushels per acre, then we have to bring anything above 62 to the co-op and sell it because we don't have enough room for it. So for the past several years, we've had to take 5 or 6 loads to the co-op because we didn't have room to store them. So if I had to guess, in the coming future, one of our next upgrades on the farm will probably be another grain bin for soybeans. While I'm thinking about it, I should probably check. Oh wow, this thing's filled up a lot. All right, we're from here to the top, so we're getting there. While we are on the topic of upgrades, aka we're on the topic of money, I would like to pivot things around a little bit and actually talk about money. I would like to talk about how our farm is doing from a financial perspective. So right off the bat, I'm just gonna address it. Is our farm on the edge of bankruptcy? No, it's not. If you're not familiar with the farming world in the United States of America, there is currently a little bit of a financial crisis going on. To make a long story short, a lot of farmers are spending more money to raise their crops than what they're able to sell them for. So they are losing money. Full transparency, losing money in the farming world is a fairly common thing. It happens every so often. What makes it problematic now is, for some guys, it's happened going on 3 years in a row. Full transparency, I am not a farm economist and I am not a farm banker. So I am just speaking from the way that I understand it and from the personal experiences that we have had. So please keep that in mind. There probably is some information that I am incorrect about. So when you have a farming operation that's been losing money for 3 years in a row, what does that actually look like and what does that mean for the farmer? To illustrate this example, we will use Farmer Bob. So let's say Farmer Bob is starting his first year of farming and he has $50,000. He takes his $50,000 and he invests it into the crop, and then he gets done at the end of the year and he realizes, oh no, I lost $50,000. So now Farmer Bob has $0. So when he goes to go into year 2, he goes to the bank and he has to borrow money. So he borrows $50,000 from the bank and he gets done with year 2, and then he realizes, oh no, I lost $50,000 again. And so now he owes the bank $50,000 plus interest. And so he's looking at year 3 and he's like, well, if I have a good year, I may be able to pay the bank back for year 2. So he borrows another $50,000 from the bank for year 3. He gets done with year 3. And then he realizes, oh no, I lost $50,000 for the 3rd year in a row. So now the bank has the $50,000 note from year 2 plus interest and the $50,000 note from year 3 plus interest. So Farmer Bob owes the bank $100,000 plus interest. And so he goes to look at year 4 and he says, hey, I'd like to borrow $50,000 again. And the bank says, I'm sorry, Bob, we've lent you all that we can. And so now Farmer Bob is left with some tough decisions. He either needs to get creative and come up with financing in some other way, or he's gonna need to be looking at selling some of his stuff in order to be able to pay back the notes. So he may be looking at selling equipment, or he may be looking at selling land. Now let's say Farmer Bob doesn't have enough equipment or land to be able to cover the full $100,000 note, then that's when Farmer Bob would be looking into bankruptcy. Now in the example of Farmer Bob, that is a simplification of how it works, but it could look different in real life from a timeline perspective, a dollar amount perspective, and there could be other creative ways of throwing different sources of financing in there or different sources of income in there. So not every case is going to look exactly like that, but that's how it works. Now to compare my family's farm to Farmer Bob, I do know that we have had years where we have spent our own money and we've lost chunks out of the money that we spent. But I don't think we've ever had it before where we've borrowed money from the bank and then lost their money. I do know that we have had years where when we planted our seeds, all of the inputs that it took to raise the crop were 100% borrowed from the bank. So that pretty much means that we had spent all of our money and we were 100% relying on the bank to be able to get things in the ground. So I grew up with a lot of tight years where, let's say, there was $10,000 left over in the bank account after all of our bills were paid. That was probably 8 years old until 18 years old for me. So at least a decade of my life was like that, literally, with $10,000 left over in the farm account. So we were making it. We definitely weren't rolling in it during those times, but we scraped by. So honestly, that's kind of been the foundation, the financial foundation of my farm life growing up, was pretty much having the belt about as tight as we could possibly go. And just to put $10,000 a year of profits into perspective, my dad and grandpa were each making $1.66 per hour. I know $1.66 an hour doesn't sound very good, but it was actually kind of done intentionally. The reason why it was kind of intentional was because my dad and grandpa were more interested in investing than necessarily making the bank account look good with numbers in it. So what they were doing is, let's say the farm was consistently generating a $50,000 per year profit. They would look at that $50,000 per year profit and say, you know, I think that's just a little bit much money to be sitting there kind of doing nothing. Let's buy a farm instead. So they would buy a farm and the payment would come out to about $40,000 per year. Well, they used to be making 50, so then now 40,000 of that 50 would disappear, so there would be 10,000 left over. So basically they were strapping themselves down with mortgage payments on farms that they were buying, and what was left over at the end of the year after all of the farm payments as well as all the mortgage payments were done was $10,000. This $10,000 profit is actually called free cash flow in the business world. So we've had all of our expenses paid. Once our expenses are done, what is left over as discretionary income that's used to grow the business, that is the free cash flow. So that's the $10,000 that I am talking about. Now, don't get me wrong. $10,000 is a lot of money, but relative to the farming world, $10,000 when trying to grow your farming operation really does not get you very far. At least not at the scale of operation that we are running. To put it into perspective, I'm sitting in a 30-year-old semi. If this semi needed to be replaced, it would cost $10,000 to replace it with another 30-year-old semi. So there goes our $10,000 of free cash flow. And for another perspective, we spend almost $150,000 a year on parts for repairs. So if we have a couple unexpected extra breakdowns, that $10,000 of free cash flow can disappear quickly. In early 2018, when my grandpa Ray was diagnosed with stage 4 glioblastoma, which is brain cancer, he sat me down and he reaches over his armchair and he pulls up this book. It's like this thick of a binder, and it was all of the farm's financial records. And he says, "Cole, you're in charge of this now." And I remember going home that night and looking through all of it, and it's just numbers and numbers and numbers. And I came back the next day and I sat down with my grandpa and I was like, "All right, Grandpa, I got some questions." And so the very first one I said was, "If we make a profit, what do we do with it?" And he sits there and kind of puts his hands on top of his belly and sits back in his chair and he's like, "I don't know. It's not my farm." I thought that moment was pretty special because to me, that was my grandpa sitting there with the baton in his hand of what he had spent his entire career building. And that was him handing it over and saying, "All right, I've raced the race this far. From here on out, it's you. And I have nothing to do with it." So that was him passing the farm over to my dad, to my brother, and to me. And I think that was pretty cool. But from that point on, we started taking our profits and we put them into debt. And so since my grandpa passed away, we have been incredibly aggressive with taking our profits and paying off loans. So we started with the smallest ones first, and then once we got those paid off, then we just snowball it into the next loan. So the payment we were making towards the loan that we had paid off, we would now apply that to our next smallest loan. And we have just continually been doing that, trying to get the farm in a really strong financial position. So that way, if some sort of farm crisis, like kind of what's going on right now, happens again, then we don't have to go to the bank to borrow money. It would be us just losing our own money. So that's what we've been working towards, and that's what we've been doing and how we've been doing it. I decided to come check on the grain bin, and I'm really glad that I did, because as soon as I got up here, I opened the door, and look at that, it was just landsliding to there. So, oh boy, she's full. I am gonna climb up on the top. I don't think the auger was completely centered in the middle of the lid, so I think we might be a little heavy on the door side. Yeah, I would say so. And maybe I'll finish filling the rest of the semi that we got over the auger in here on this side. But I do need to take this auger and move it that way, probably 10 inches. Tell because it's dark. I'll probably have to tell for sure in the morning. There may be room for a half of a semi load, if that, but we were able to get ours empty, so we are headed back to the field. Actually, looking at how full the door is, I think we're gonna call it good. I moved the auger forward, but we still must have got some landsliding on the backside regardless. Look at that, it's literally right up to the top. It's not good when we get the bin that full, because when we go to turn this fan on later to cool these beans down, once it starts to freeze outside, the air that gets blown through the beans
will then lift them up and throw them right out through that hole all the way around, and then you have a nice little spill pile all the way around the bend.
Like clockwork. Got a half a semi load already.
Since our grain bin's full, we need to move the auger to another bend, but we're not going to be able to do that in the dark, so we just got both the semis out here in the field full, and we're going to get the combine fueled up, so that way everything's just ready to go for the morning. Got the old Thunder Creek fuel trailer. All right, we ended up getting 147 acres done today. So with that being said, we're all beat. We're tired. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.